So the first way that you can be more of an appealing laner for your jungler to go and help is to time stuff. I'm talking about timing summoners, specifically a flash cooldown. I'm talking about timing ultimates, high impact ultimates, especially ones that can be used as an escape tool. Think about someone like Malphite, for example. And I'm also talking about timing out the location of wards. If your enemy laner has no flash, then that is a target which me as a jungler is going to be looking to spend more time around, because chances are I'll be more successful if I put my time there. Likewise, if you see where the enemy laner has put down their wards, and you can not only time those wards but also ping out on the minimap so I know where those wards are, then that allows me to plan my jungle route out, and also allows me to know when actually spending time on that lane just probably wouldn't work because I'd be seen. And of course the high impact ultimates as well. If all these things are down and you can time them and I know that they're down, then chances are I'm going to have much more of a happy time ganking that lane. If there's a Malphite with no ultimate, no flash, no wards, then I maybe would see that lane as quite a good place for me to put my time. Of course, that doesn't apply if you're playing against a LeBlanc. That bloody champion it doesn't have an ultimate cooldown, and you know, no cooldown, and can use it for ridiculous burst, ridiculous utility, ridiculous mobility. I'm not salty or anything like that. I probably shouldn't complain though about her, because I do play her on my main and I do have like 65% win rate on her. I abuse her a little bit. Anyway, if you're sitting there thinking, okay, so I just need to time things, but how do I actually go about timing things? Well, fear not, it's actually a lot easier than it sounds. If you want to time summoners, all you've got to do is press tab and just hover your mouse cursor over the summoner spell that relates to the laner you're playing against, and you'll see the cooldown of his summoner, of his ability. You'll see the specific cooldown as well, so that also takes into consideration whether or not they've got like summoner spell cooldown masteries. Then just do a little bit of maths, add that onto the current time or the time when they used the flash, and you'll know when it's coming back up again. Timing wards is a little bit trickier, but not that much trickier, because the enemy laner's wards will last as long as your wards will. So as long as you know how long your wards last, you know how long their wards last. As for ultimates, that can be probably the hardest one, because there's no real way of knowing exactly when that ability is coming back up. But as a general rule of thumb, if it's a pretty high impact ultimate, or rank 1 at least, then you can guess that it'll be about a minute and a half. Anyway, moving on to the next point, the second thing that you can be doing to be getting more ganks from your jungler is to communicate with him better. Of course, this does overlap a little bit with the previous point about putting timers down and telling your jungler when the timers are, but also just letting your jungler know what's happening in the lane and when good times to go and gank would be. So for example, if you're pushing really hard, you're crashing a wave into the enemy tower, and you know it's going to push back into you, or you're going to set up a freeze or something like that. These are situations where the enemy laner may overextend, may be vulnerable, but they're things which will be happening in the future, things you're thinking about, not things that are necessarily happening right now in the moment. So if the jungler just quickly looks at your lane, he's not necessarily going to be seeing a laner overextended. However, that may be happening down the line. So if you can communicate with your jungler and be like, yo, listen mate, this lane's going to be pushing in and I'm going to freeze it for you, come and gank in like 30 seconds. All these things help me to know where a good place to go and gank is. On top of that, if you put the effort into communicating when would be a good time to gank, not only does that obviously give me the information of when a good time to gank would be, obviously, but it also tells me that you are someone, you're a player who actually cares about the way the game's going down and is actually intelligent enough to kind of have that foresight. If you can show that you have a good understanding of the game, or maybe not even understanding, just that you care about the game, then you're someone that I don't mind putting a lot of time into helping, because chances are you're going to be using your brain and it'll be easier for you to carry. In addition, you can also communicate that your ultimate's going to be coming up soon, or that you want to try and plan a dive out or something like that. Third point about how to get more ganks from your jungler is to be a gankable lane and to not be a ungankable lane. Basically, what I mean when I say this is that if you're sitting there crying about needing a gank and you're on 10% health, you've got 2 waves of minions coming in, you got no vision to block a counter gank, I'm not going to come to your lane. Like, maybe I'll come to your lane to stop him from diving you, but there's no way I can gank your lane. If you want to be getting a gank, you cannot be really low on health. If you're constantly losing trades or getting poked out or something, yes, that can be frustrating, especially if you're in a bad lane matchup. But I can't help you if you're too low. If you need me to come and gank for you, you can't be taking that free harass. So just play safe. And again, going back to the previous point, communicate with me. Just say that you're struggling in the matchup and that you need a gank or something, and then just play a little bit safe and wait for me to come. Again, if there are loads of minions, then it's just going to be way too hard to gank, especially the earlier on the game it is. Minions actually do a lot of damage, especially like I say in that early game, and trying to get a gank off is really hard if the enemy laner can just play around those minions, especially if I'm someone that needs to land a skill shot like Lee Sin or Elise. And a point about vision as well is that if you can't 1v1 the enemy laner, then if I come and gank and we don't have vision and we don't know where the enemy jungler is, if he happens to be there, not only are you going to be in a bad situation, but so am I. It's really risky to gank lanes that aren't doing so well themselves, especially if you don't know where the enemy jungler is. So you need to have a little bit of vision set up so we at least know, okay, the jungler isn't going to come from here. Essentially, if you are in a position where you can't help me with that gank, you're basically expecting me to be able to 1v1 the enemy laner. And considering junglers have fewer experience, fewer gold than laners do, that's not going to happen. Fourth point about getting more ganks from your jungler is to not be a massive bellend. If you don't know what that means, basically just don't be a Colossus cock. If you're like spam pinging me just as I'm clearing the jungle, if you're just raging at me about stuff, why on earth would I come and help you out? Just think about it for a second, right? If you want something from someone, the last thing you're gonna do is abuse them. Why would they help you if you're being horrible to them? On top of that as well, it's not just about like having a fragile ego or whatever. If someone is the type of person to be really angry about needing a gank, that's not really someone that I look at as to who might carry the game. When I think about people who would carry the game, I don't think about these negative people who are always whining and raging. Like, carrying a game is as much about your attitude as it is about your skill. On top of that as well, you should never ever need a jungler in your lane. Yes, jungle presence is good, it will help you win, but just by itself, you should be able to deal with situations without needing your jungler. Your jungler is just a bonus. So if you're raging at me because you need me, then so many red flags about that, and yeah, that's not something that helps me to come and gank for you. Even if you're very frustrated at your jungler, guys, just try and just can it a little bit. Everyone, like, junglers are very abused people, okay? Like, junglers get enough hate as it is, and if you're someone who opens their mouth and starts whining, it immediately goes into like a spam filter, right? And yeah, that's not where you want to be. The last point I want to make here about getting more ganks from your jungler is to not pick someone that's really hard to gank for. Specifically, these are people who either don't have much crowd control, or they don't have a lot of early game burst, or you're against someone, or on top of that, you're against someone who has high mobility. A good example of this would be something like Vladimir versus Renekton. Like, if you're the Vladimir on my team and you need a gank at level 3 versus Renekton, who not only has a gap closer but also has a double gap closer if you try and come in from behind him, and you're Vlad, who's got like no burst damage in the early game, no CC, or at least he didn't have to, I don't know about his bloody overpowered rework or whatever the hell it is. Yeah, that's not really something that I can help with. Like, it's fine to pick these champions. Like, you can pick these champions that don't set up ganks very well. They're not bad by themselves. It's just these aren't champions that you should expect a lot of jungle help on. Like, if you're somebody that's really angry that junglers aren't ganking your lane and you're a Soraka main, for goodness sake, just start maining like Thresh or something, and then, you know, that's a lane which I'm probably gonna look at and think, you know what, I might be able to do something in that lane. Champion picks aren't everything in solo queue. I rate them quite low, actually. Most people rate them fairly high, and like people give up in champ select and they're just like, yeah, I'm not really one of those people. I just think that, you know, if you're picking a champion you're good at, then anything can happen in solo queue. Like, legit, you can't theorize too much about solo queue because stuff happens that shouldn't. But at any rate, it definitely is true that it helps a lot if you are picking a champion that can assist with the gank, that can set up the gank, something like that. However, just because you have picked one of these champions that can't help too much doesn't mean that you're impossible to gank for. It just means you're gonna have to play around different kind of strategies. Specifically, you're gonna have to play around like lane positioning and wave manipulation. Like, you can't force a gank by like your CC or your burst damage, hello Shad, but you might be able to like let the enemy laner push into you, and then with him overextending, even if you don't have that CC or that high burst damage, we might still be able to get it done. But anyway, that's what I want to say for this video, guys. That pretty much covers every point that I want to talk about on how to get more ganks from your jungler. I know it can be frustrating when you feel like you don't get a lot of ganks and you're always getting ganked all the time, but chances are there's some more you can be doing. If you follow these tips, you're sure to be getting some more ganks.